Hello and welcome to the Modern Apps Learning live stream. Today we are continuing with our series on using GitOps to automate tweets with the GitHub Actions and Bash. This is the third in the series of videos. The first was a planning video. The second video, realized I wanted to go through some more low-level details before we got too much into the hands-on portions. And so I marked the second video as optional. There's some really good information in there that, detailed considerations for some lessons I've learned about how to pass, for passing variables through various GitHub action stuff. But if you just want to get to the action, we're going to go ahead and dive on into the code. And so where we left off is to get started, we're going to go ahead and implement a GitHub action for this tweet.sh bash client. And before we get into our final solution, we want to be able to test the syntax in GitHub Actions, because while GitHub Actions, like most workflow tools, it does very, it's bash, right? But you're in the context of server that's running, and it's not, they do some things to add like some safety features and manageability features and things that make it just a little bit, there's some policy layers that are in place that are a little different than what's on your own Linux, your own owned Linux device. So anywho, let's go ahead and get into testing this. We're going to create a GitHub action of the type that's called manual dispatch. And let's just go ahead here and get our reference open up. GitHub action manual. That's probably good enough. Oh, maybe manual might be too vague of a term. Thinking I'm actually looking for the instruction manually running workflow. Close enough. That's exactly what we want to do. It's our manual dispatch. It seems like whenever I decide to record anything, my internet just immediately gets slower. Okay, so let's see, configuring an action to run manually. Okay, yes, I see. So this is how you actually run the manual workflow, but that is not the actual code that we're going to look at. So let's see what our other link here is. Events that let's just go ahead, type in this additional keyword. I think manual is maybe a bit too vague. Okay, manually, blog. Workflow dispatch. Okay, maybe that's maybe what I got wrong. Maybe it's the is it workflow dispatch here? What is the syntax? I've got it up right in my other window. Perhaps I'm gonna forget a word right as I'm getting started. Okay, let's go ahead and see. Here's one that I already have running. Yep, workflow dispatch is the keyword that we're looking for here. And so I actually already had one of these I was using for a different purpose. And so I've copied over um, in the second video if you want to see the details, but I haven't really done much. I copied over a workflow from a different use case and pulled it into here, and I'm updating it for the manual tweet. And so with the GitHub Actions event triggers, you can see workflow dispatch. And I gave a bad impression there because usually it's very easy to identify all the workflow dispatch or all any of the GitHub Actions documentation. I think I just realized, depending on the keyword you're searching for, it may be better first to search for the GitHub Actions documentation. Make sure you're in the documentation website first, and then you search within that context. And they have a pretty, common sense navigation that you get used to pretty easily when you're. So we want to look for our event sources here. So we've got our GitHub Actions documentation. And let's see, events that trigger workflows. And we want to go to, let's just type in the word dispatch. Oh, there's over here on the right, we've got our workflow dispatch manual events, workflow dispatch, and repository dispatch. So let's go ahead and go workflow dispatch. And you can see here, you can manually trigger workflow runs. Um, and so we've got our workflow dispatch, and we can see our workflow dispatch syntax. And I'm just showing this here to show, it's good to have up because you may have questions about your syntax as you're crafting out your action. You have up on in a tab when you're getting ready to work, but and also to show like I'm starting here based on a file I already had crafted out. And in case you don't have that available for you, you can find exactly the same. You can just copy and paste this into a workflow file right here and do the same thing, modify this to get it to do what you want it to do. So now that we've got that open, let's go ahead and jump into VS Code and get back to our tutor job. And so let's see. So in this case, I have a whole bunch of steps here that I'm not going to need. So let's think about what we do need, right? In this case, we are going to capture everything really that we need in our inputs. Because we said our input is a tweet. We decided that at least at the current time, I'm not going to rely on any other user provided metadata. If I'm going to attempt first to get any metadata I might need from system provided metadata before I think about having to ask a user for another interaction, because a tweet really is a you know just a single field item. There isn't a separate title and body or what have you. It's a very simple schema. Um, okay, so let's go ahead. We've got our job. Let's see, we have our name. We're running on Ubuntu latest. That works good for me. I always start these off again with this step to review the payload file that shows all the details from GitHub that are all the metadata and information that were related to starting this particular workflow run. And so, if you need any information to use in your workflow, which we will, right? Because in this case, what we're going to use in our workflow run is we're going to take an input here, and we're going to use the value that is an input. Now I need to go ahead and so this input, I gave it a name already called tweet, but obviously didn't finish filling out the description here, and I'm not going to worry about character limitations right now. We're just going to make this real simple, and I'm going to say enter your tweet. I don't want to have any default here, so we're just going to go ahead and leave. I think I could probably not specify default, but I'm not interested in testing it out right now, so I'm just going to leave default there. So I get to keep it there from a templating perspective in any case, and leave it as a blank value. And so now under manual tweet, we can call this let's call this post new tweet. Let's see, access call this job tweet. So that's one of the things is interesting about the schema in GitHub Actions, that with the naming is like a lot of times you end up with like these layers of names because there are abstractions here. I can have multiple jobs, right? But it's interesting, I need this kind of like name for this manual tweet namespace, and you can have an additional metadata column here for essentially the job name, which doesn't necessarily have to be the same as this kind of namespace container for manual tweets. So it's kind of weird that way. I don't know the reason for that. I'm not super experienced with GitHub Actions, but you're good enough to get the job done. Okay, so let's see. So we're gonna go ahead and call this. I'll just call this post a tweet for now. If I find that there's a more important, some significance to that name that I should be thinking about as we grow, then we'll just cross that bridge later. Okay. We're not going to need this initialize get because we're not doing anything really with get. That's one of the things that's important to remember. Like with this manual method, it isn't exactly GitOps, right? Because at least for me, people fight over definitions of things, but I think like the center of GitOps is that workflow where you do a pull request and there's an approval process, and you may do all types of automations and streamlining enhancements of that process, but that's kind of the core of the process. And this kind of bypasses this. I'm just kind of using GitHub as a medium to post a tweet, but I'm not really doing anything with my repository. I'm accepting a user input value and running a GitHub action that happens to be associated with this repository to post a tweet. As we get into the build this out past the test, this initial test, then we're going to take some information here from our GitHub repository that people can post in files and learn from other events that happen on our repository to use that then to automate. So for this testing phase, like I said, it's a very manual thing, not exactly GitOps, but as we get into this next part, we'll get into like our full-fledged GitOps implementation. Okay, so we're gonna not initialize the Git for this here. Do I need? So why I do this is it's kind of um, the way there's different ways to access variables within GitHub, and I wanted to put this one into the GitHub environment file in this format, and there's some peculiar things about dating that get weird. I'm not going to say that there's any type of best practice, but so don't necessarily look at how I'm doing this current date as something that should be done or should not be done. I just I was playing with it to try to get it a certain way that I wanted it, and this was a solution I found that worked for me. So I'll leave it there. I don't think I'm going to call it, but I should clean this up later. Actually, you know what? I have this reference. Let's just go ahead and get rid of all this stuff. I want to make this nice and clean. If I need it, then I'll add it. I still am using that in my reference that I built this that I'm using here as my source for my template. So now I just want to go ahead. We're not going to use any of that stuff, but I just want to go further into my own example because I'm just going to look at just a regular old. I'm just going to copy this for syntax just to make it simple so I don't really have to think about syntax. And we're going to come in here. And this is the only thing I really like about the GitHub action format here is they do make it really, relatively simple. Like whenever you're using a workflow tool to pass or scripting at all, like in Bash, right? Like one of the things is if you're trying to pass through, very complex multi-line commands, it can always be a bit of a bear. At the same time, when you're if you've used there's a variety of different tools that automate that are like workflow tools and other types of tools that will roll out a bash script or automate a workflow, bash into workflow, and a lot of times they make you use extra complicated syntax in order to get it to pass through the variable to the execution environment. Because right, we're putting this in a template. It needs to grab this and actually run and execute it, and it needs to make sure it does that properly. And so GitHub Actions is very good about making that pretty simple. As you can tell, I can just kind of there's this nice little syntax that you can use here. You put your little pipe, and you can kind of enter your line by line commands here pretty predictably. There's always cases with Bash that you're going to run into really complex syntax that you have to pass through to different places in scripts, and it can get hairy. But for the most part, most things very, very straightforward here in GitHub Actions. So now we're going to go over back to our, we have some dependencies to install. I forget exactly. I don't remember the full list of everything that is already pre-installed on the standard GitHub Action Ubuntu. And I'm pretty sure curl's excuse me, curl is already installed. Um, and I'm actually, yeah, I'm pretty confident of that because I don't think I install it. But we need JQ, we need NKF, and I'm pretty sure OpenSSL is already installed. So I'm gonna, yeah. So that's the rub, right? We're asking what is on the GitHub Actions virtual machine that runs this, that is actually running this. That is what comes in that Ubuntu environment, and there's good documents about that, but I don't really want to look for that right now. It might be the more expedient path, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm gonna, I think that curl and OpenSSL are already there based on my past experience. Feel pretty confident, and I'm going to allow that to direct my path here to where I'm just going to run the install for JQ and NKF and see how that works for us in our test. And if I run into an error, our initial test that says I need one of these other things, then I'll go from there. So let's go ahead and go back into VS Code. Okay, so now we're back in VS Code. got manual tweet. Hold on a second. Just wanted to confirm more detail. Okay. So now I have all this other stuff down here. Now I use JQ in a lot of workflows, so there's a decent chance that I already have my preferred syntax for installing JQ. Like anything in Linux, there's a lot of ways to install anything, and unless JQ may be one of the things that's, so I'm using it here and I'm not installing it. I think actually JQ is one of the ones that's pre-installed. So let's go out on a limb and say we're just gonna do install NKF, and we'll call this step, we're gonna call this step install dependencies, oops, or um, install dependencies for tweet.sh. And then we'll come down here and we're going to say sudo out. So, there's all this controversy about apps, and using it in production services. And so, I do not know, and I'm not attempting in any way to like try to represent any official position on what VMware's official position is across the board on anything I happen to say. So just to be clear about that. But like, I'm not going for perfection here, and this isn't an especially secure environment. I also think there's something to be said too for the nature of these workflow systems, because this an event happens and then a brand new Ubuntu template that is vanilla, doesn't have any of our configuration in it, gets brought into existence for the duration of time needed to execute this workflow, and then it disappears, right? And so, yeah, not saying that means that you can be sloppy everywhere, but I think it is one of those areas where, from a security perspective, it is very, very important to get the right level of security. You can't just add infinite layers, otherwise you cannot move, breathe, or exist. Right, and a lot of times, adding additional layers, right, no, it's always true. Adding additional layers also increases your footprint and your threat vortex. So it can be very counterproductive. So, anyhow, so I'm going to use apt-get, and or what did I say the name of that app was? NKF. So apt-get install NKF, and just to double check, when I installed NKF on my machine, make sure I did it the same way. I'm pretty sure. Yep. So that's how I did it here. I didn't say -y, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave the -y there, because that usually results in it. I can't. I seem to think it did it automatically, anyways. But I don't want it to result in any type of manual interaction, so we'll leave the -y, and that's it. So we installed the dependencies. Easy. Okay. So now all we should need to do is send our tweet. Right. So oh wait, not send our tweet. We got to install tweet.sh. So we'll go ahead and copy this. And yeah, for these single line ones, you don't really need to keep the bar syntax. Keep the bar on the run and have the sudo on the next line. You could just make it a single line statement. But I'm not even sure that this is, unless I'm confident that I want to keep this particular step as a single line statement. I'm just going to scaffold, in this case, feel good about leaving it scaffolded like that. So that way, if I want to add additional things in there, it's real simple. Doesn't hurt anything. So let's go ahead and install the dependencies, and let's go ahead and let's do install tweet.sh. And let's just go ahead and let's just say get clone. I'm trying to think. Is this gonna have any dependency? Oh, no, it'll be fine. I'll just do a straight up git clone, and I'm not even gonna. I don't even need to type that in, because we're gonna go, and I'm gonna go ahead and just use the regular HTTPS, because I get these GitHub Action Runners do have GH installed on them. And in general, I prefer using the GH GitHub client, And I even have some syntax in some of my actions that set up my local config file for GH. But that's the thing. I don't know that GH will respond well if I don't set up my local config. And shoot, maybe I shouldn't have deleted that get initialization step. I was thinking about whether I needed to push something from my repository or and I don't in this case. But if I do need to clone down this, I don't know if it's going to bark at me if I don't have any get initialization in this local client. But let's just go ahead and try it and go from there. Um, so now I've copied over my get clone string. Let's go back into VS Code here. Super slow. Come on. Okay. So zero out this line. So, I thought it copied the whole statement. Okay, so let's just get clone. So now we've got that, and then we'll go ahead and we'll go cd and should be tweet sh. Let's just make sure that is exactly how it worked out for me here. Let's go. What is up with my bash? I have okay. Well, I thought I put it in my get root here, but maybe I put it somewhere else because I don't see that tweet.sh file. I'm gonna probably put it in forks or in clone. There it is. See, I had done this previously in my own in a Git, so I can see. Just wanted to make sure that my syntax here matches the testing that I did a couple days ago. Okay, so we clone it down. We cd into the directory. Now the next thing we need to do is there is a file in here, and let's see which directory am I? Manual tweet. Where do I want to put this? So when I clone down tweet.sh, it is going to download this file here, and it says that I can populate this file. And this is what I did when I did it on my local client. However, I'm thinking that I don't want to use the key file. I would rather use this external thing. So honestly, I should probably just like curl the raw file, but I don't need to actually pull down all of this all the entire Git cloning environment. Like the main reason why you want to clone this, like I cloned it in my local environment because it just in the event that this gets an update and I want to have you take advantage of that update, it makes it easier for me whether I fork it or make a direct clone to potentially take advantage of an update that a person makes. But in the case of this workflow run, and we're talking about every time a new workflow happens, it's always going to download fresh copy. It's going to download the current version of this repository. So but then the workflow run is going to end, and then the machine is just going to disappear. It's going to be deleted, and so there's no reason to think about long-term maintaining the software that we install inside of the context of a single workflow run. Right? We think that the templates that we make that produce these workflow runs, that's where we think about making these maintenance, and so that's not a concern there. So I'm going to go ahead and create these environmental variables here. So in this case, well, let's go ahead and let's change the syntax here. Instead of cloning this down, I'm going to pull down just the tweet.sh file because that's all that I need. I don't need all that repository and all that extra baggage. So let's go ahead and search my file here. Oh, I don't have any raw polls there. So let me go and look in one of these other workflow runs to get, I've got a lot of examples of things I've already done. So I can go ahead here and find the example context, hopefully, of of a pull that I did of a raw GitHub file. So here's one, for example, and this gives me all of the syntax I need to um, just modify this a little bit. And this information is not hard to find, right? So you can go into Google searches and look into the or just the rest of the GitHub action documentation has all this stuff right there. It's just nice, I know that this works, and so we'll go ahead and just delete that stub that I had there. Okay, and we'll call this say pull. I'm not a huge fan of making steps that are since it's single commands, it's nice to consolidate where you can, but at the same time, you also have to follow a logical order. And I think this is a big important task here. Even though it's a single command, we're going to curl this one down. We're going to cat it out. We don't want to call it member record. We got to update this here. So where is the tweet.sh script? We need to get the address for the raw file. So let's go ahead and the other thing too, let's see, it should just be, let's go here, let's click on tweet.sh, and we want to go raw. And now we have the raw address. Should just be able to replace this URL. I'm just going to make sure. So I did put some dynamic syntax in my previous URL, but in this case, I don't need to. This source is always going to be the same source, so I don't need any dynamic inputs. Okay. We got rid of that if, and so now let's just rename the file. We want to put the output for this curl into, what do we call this? Tweet.sh. So, and we don't want to put it in in a different directory. We'll just put it right in. Well, maybe we should it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to put it here in the local directory, which is just a tweet, doesn't matter. Okay, so we'll call this tweet.sh, and we're going to say cat tweet.sh. That way, when we look at our run, let's troubleshoot this, we will see, and we can review that file, what the output is of this cat, make sure that it actually has the script. Okay, now we want another command here. Actually, I'll do it this way. Now we want to add another step here for, let's go ahead and say, post a tweet. And now we're going to say, let me just look back at this syntax here. And I'm going to say dot slash tweet.sh. So we can see this is a working syntax down here at the bottom of my screen in the bash terminal. You can see tweet.sh post, and then I just added quotation marks around. It's very, very simple syntax. And so that's all we need to do for the syntax. So let's go ahead and here on this, and we're going to say /tweet.sh post. And then now we were going to say, what do we want to say? We want to carry forth nothing here other than this field that we call tweet. Now, let me remember the syntax here. Hopefully, I should have inputs in this. Yeah, so we can see here the syntax right here of how of our inputs. So this is the standard GitHub action variable syntax around here with our $sign and double curly brackets. And then when you're accessing your metadata that GitHub provides, they're all under this namespace of GitHub. And then there's various different sub kind of namespaces within, and then the GitHub, the .github there, that you can filter for different things. Most things are in the event. Most of the metadata that GitHub has available in a workflow run is right there in that github.event.something. In this case, we're going to make sense there, github.event. So we're going to go here, we'll go inside our quotations there. One really nice thing about using the GitHub action variable syntax, like you can use local environmental variables and standard bash syntax for local environmental variables. But if you've done that a lot in writing scripts before, you know that you got to get real creative when you're trying to pass through lots of special characters, and make sure that your variable populates correctly, right? And the one nice thing about using this syntax in GitHub Actions, when you actually push this into the GitHub environment as a variable, or able to pull Git from this environment rather than just directly through Bash, it almost always resolves correctly, because GitHub Actions, and they um, pre-build or what have you, pre-populate this before it goes through the localhost stuff. Okay, inputs, and we called this just tweet. Okay, and that should be it. Okay, and we're on now. One thing that I did, and I did this in video 2. If you happen to see video 2, if not, I said no, don't worry about it. And for this detail, anyways, um, is I decided to set up this manual tweet file, just for testing purposes in this repository called course repository template. No particular reason for that, and it doesn't really matter. Just decided to test it somewhere. So I have this manual tweet file, and it's actually on a fork, so I can actually test this on the fork entirely before I do anything, push anything back to, if I want to actually host this on the course repository. I'm not sure. This is not meant to be a production service, right? This is meant to be a temporary testing facility to help us make sure that syntax is right before we build and scale out into further assets that are a little harder to test. All right, so let's, now that I've got this done, we'll go ahead and save this. Now, one thing that, oh, and kind of a cool thing with Visual Studio Code, you can see I'm in a this tweet.sh directory. That's not where I want to be. Where I want to be is in this course repository template directory. So I want to navigate to it. I would rather not type the whole freaking thing out. So I'm just gonna go look at in my nav bar there, copy path. And now I can cd paste the path, and I'm in where I need to be. And one thing I did not do, and I even said I was going to do this in the last video, is before I started working on this manual tweet file, which is new, so it's not been posted to the site. I know that it couldn't have been anyone else have been working on it because it hasn't been shared anywhere, right? So, but before I started working on this manual tweet file, I said, oh, I should be sure to refresh, pull down a fresh copy of my Git repository before I start working on it locally. That's always a best practice. Now, fortunately, in this case, it's kind of not a big deal because I haven't done really anything other than that, and that's not that's not really the type of action that would create any sort of conflict. And so that's a very good opportunity to use this command git rebase, which we use for a lot of things, but rebase specifically is for cases where you may have some work you've done locally. Now, don't use rebase carelessly because there's actually a lot of implications to rebase, right? We use rebase because it does a little bit more than this, right? But for the purpose of everything you do in the Ninja file, or if you're working on a production GitHub repository, make sure that you use the methods that your Git administrator prefers for your repositories and your projects, right? In our case, we really like Rebase. Kubernetes uses Rebase a lot. Um, but one of the other, the benefits of Rebase includes that when you say Rebase, what it does is it automatically takes your tweet or your whatever changes that you made locally, and it sort of automatically stashes them for you. You can always run through stash if you need to do it a different way, but it sort of automatically stashes them for you, and then pulls down and applies the things that happened in the timeline, before your event, before your local change would have happened, right? And then it applies your all-in-one simple command. So I'm going to go ahead and fetch my, so git fetch And I'm not going to do upstream this time, right? Because right now I'm not going to care whether I'm in sync with my upstream. I'm on a fork, so the upstream is the actual one on ModernApps.ninja, right? And I'm on a fork of that, which is a copy of that on my own local repository that I can use for testing. I oftentimes will want to, when I'm working on things, want to make sure I'm in sync with upstream. I almost always do, but in this case, this little testing artifact I'm going to keep here as a very temporary artifact. I may decide to put that somewhere, and keep a little tester of this for whatever reason. But I don't really see a reason to it once I get my my so I'll probably delete this, and this may never move past my fork. So I'm not going to be concerned at this point right now if my fork is in sync, because this is just a temporary artifact. So I'm, instead of fetching upstream, I'm going to fetch origin, which is going to be my fork on GitHub. And so now that I have fetch origin, I can say get rebase origin. Current range is up to date, so that's nice. As expected, I didn't expect that I had changed anything, but it had been a while since I touched this repository, and I just started working on this file. Whenever you do that, usually before you start working on any repository, if you're going to be making any changes, it's just a very, very simple hygiene practice. It takes a second, and you build it into muscle memory real quick to always just refresh that repository before you make any changes to help reduce your chances of ending up with some type of merge conflict. Okay, so now we're here and we're going to go ahead. Okay, so now I can go ahead and add, and we'll get commit this change, and we can check our git status, because we want to just double check here, and I can see the only change is exactly what I expected. It is adding this file manual tweet. So that's good. It's good. I don't always do it on my previous videos, but I should start doing that. To just always do a little git status check um, as a regular habit, to double check to see your stuff. And so let's go ahead and get commit. And I'm going to use -m to put the message on here. And I'm going to say adding. I'll just call it test. I add the word testing there for clarity. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and we'll push this on up to my fork. Okay, so now I want to go to the fork here. Actually, just copy this. Not that much. Just want to copy the repo name here so I don't have to type it in because I'm lazy. So let's see. Ninja. And then we'll just go here, slash. Oops. Of course. Neither worked the way I anticipated. No, that's not what I wanted to do. And then press back. I don't know if this streaming software is like. But the funny thing is, it doesn't seem like the streaming software really adds too much of a burden. It's just like Murphy's Law that whenever I'm streaming, my internet gets a lot slower. Oh gosh. Come on. This is not what I wanted it to do. Back one time. There we go. I'm not used to working at this slow pace of internet that it's doing right now. Let's see. Okay, now this is going to paste too much in, which is okay because it has at least what I want. And lesson learned there is I probably should have just typed it to begin with. The browser would have, I'm sure, automatically populated as soon as I typed CO. And once again, trying to be lazy did not pay off. Okay, let's see. So now I have this course repo template. Now you're saying, where's it on a fork? Yep, it's on a fork. And the nice thing is if you're already on the main repo and you want to get back to your fork, and you think, well, I already forked, I don't need to click that fork button again. But if you do click the fork button again, all it does is it says, hey, you've already done this, and it gives you the link. And sometimes that's a nice little quick way of getting back to your fork, because sometimes when you're working on your fork, you have to go back and forth a little between the upstream and your fork. Okay, so now we are looking at my repository. Now I should be able to see here that my new workflow. So I have my manual tweet workflow. Let's go ahead and check in our actions, and this will tell us right away whether there was a syntax error in my action. And I'm just thinking here, I don't know if there was a syntax error. It did not say there was a syntax error, but did I delete the rest of that file? See, good thing I double checked this. I mean, it probably would have aired out before it created any harm. But here's to not being sloppy, because as you can see, I started off as we often do in this line of work. We copy over a similar file and then we modify it. And I didn't want to delete all the stuff out of the first part of the file. I should have probably commented it just in case as a safety measure. Did not. And I went to go upload my thing in my workflow. Unfortunately, before I ran it, I just coincidentally happened to remember, oh wait, I didn't delete that extra stuff I left in here. I thought, oh, I'll leave this extra stuff from the other file in here in the bottom of this file because it may have something I want to copy and paste from. But I'm not even going to bother trying to uh, comment it all out right now. I'm just going to delete it. I know that there's shortcuts to get to the end of the file, and I don't know, with my using a virtual machine inside of a virtual machine with open broadcasting and also stuff layered on top, the end button was just not wanting to go do what it normally does. So I'll just manually scroll down, and I'll just there's no requirement in GitHub action files like JavaScript or anything to leave any blank lines at the end. So it doesn't really matter if you do either way in my experience anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and zero that out. Now, before we actually run this, now we're going to go ahead and add that change and push it back up. We'll go ahead and commit. Instead of saying adding, I'm going to change my to updating. And keep in mind when you're doing these descriptions, remember, like if you actually have to go look up your record, right, where you're adding a description, that the actual record of exactly what you changed is going to always be there, right? And so you do want to have a nice descriptive title. And we should, over time, we can really put some more effective metadata, probably in a lot of titling practices that might help streamline things over time. But you don't need to go crazy with that, right? Because in the day, the most important thing is that it's descriptive. So that way, if you're looking for something and you need to get into it, you see something descriptive, but it doesn't have to be so descriptive because once you click on it, you're going to have the information that was changed. So now let's get push. Okay, and now we'll go ahead and switch back over. Now I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. See my Hugo build and deploy, that's set to run every single time any push happens. So it shows that it didn't, that kind of gives me an indication, right? I can tell that it got something. So now we can go ahead and go to manual tweet. We'll say run workflow, and we're going to say enter your tweet. Okay, we're going to say test of, let's see, get GitHub action, and let's see, oops, not SH, SH. Okay, so let's see what test of GitOps space. Yep. So we entered the tweet. Let's go ahead and click run. And now we cross our, oh, that's definitely not going to work. I never injected those environmental variables I was talking about. Yeah. So it has no knowledge of how to connect to anything. So we can go ahead and actually look at that run though. So let's go ahead and see, refresh this, and we can see, of course, that failed because there's a few, and let's go ahead and see what error message it gave us just for fun. I don't know what exactly, there we go. Okay, blah, 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 permission denied. Of course, permission denied because there's no keys in the file. So yeah, makes total sense. So let's jump back over to our VS Code and fix that. Now, okay, and we're gonna go ahead, in this case, let's see, we wanna go ahead here, and I'm gonna inject the environmental variables. There's lots of different ways to inject environmental variables in GitHub Actions. Now, let's see, in this case, we have the environmental variables that we're looking for are GitHub Action secrets. So I could like inject them into like use bash stuff to do this, but it's actually nice for this type of syntax where I just need these environmental variables right here. And especially since they're security related, I'm pretty confident. I'm certain. Before you bank on this, I would go double check the documentation, but I'm pretty confident that when you use when you associate an environmental variable with a single step using this syntax, that it is not adding them to the entire overall GitHub environment for all workflow runs to access. They should be limited in scope to be able to access the environmental them from within this step, which is a great practice from a security standpoint. So if you're passing any secure variables, you don't want them to be cached in the entire virtual machine. Just keep them in just within the single step that you need. So I think the syntax here is like end. Let's go ahead and then let me go ahead and let's go back. In this case, I know I have it in other files, but I don't want to always be just looking at my own files since not everybody can do that. Although everybody can, right? You can go into all the GitHub Modern Apps Ninja repos have a bunch of different. Most pretty much all of them have a bunch of different GitHub Action workflows, and so you're always welcome to look at any of those. They're completely public. You can always dig through those and see if you can find any syntax that you like. But let's go to say environmental variables down here in my documentation. Yep, and so we can see very, very straightforward syntax in, and then you put like a key value pair on the next line in the standard YAML syntax. Okay, so let's go back to our docs, or not to our docs, to our VS Code. Do end, and what do we want to call this one? Uh, Not that. What is it? So we need these to be very specific names. So we need to go into this prior.sh documentation, and we're gonna go back. Oh, and actually, it would be a good practice too. Since we already do have one running, while it failed, let's make sure that our tweet.sh script actually looks like did what it was supposed to do. And it did not. So there was definitely some. It's good that we checked that, right? Because I could have done this all over again, and I'm wondering if it's saying that. So let's just go authorization token. Now that's one interesting. So when you use GitHub Secrets, it does not display the output of your secret in this. Fortunately, right? We wouldn't want that. And so my actual syntax in VS Code. Let's see what it says. It says secrets.ninja.guru, which is absolutely valid syntax for me. And so the fact that it's not putting anything there should not be any issue. I thought they'd put like a little asterisk or something, but it should. It should definitely. Oh, no, that's exactly what it is. I can't use secrets.ninja.guru because I am in my own fork. Right. So really, that's a great learning lesson for when you're using GitHub Action secrets because you can't execute them outside of your domain. And so if you have somebody who's working on something on a fork, then yeah, so that's not going to work for them. And so if you do have the type of need where you might want somebody to have a fork, in that context, it's not a problem, right? But it may be a scenario where it's like, we know we're going to be doing some development on a repository and it needs to be somewhere. And so you could on one of your repositories that is in your one of your actual production repositories, create a branch and allow people on that branch to do what they need to do, or you could create additional temporary repository within your GitHub organization and give use permissions to allow the appropriate people to do what they need to on that, and then that way they have a place where they can test with the appropriate access to secrets that allows them access secrets, right? And it's kind of good, to have it this way because anybody can fork your repository, anybody, and you don't want anybody to be able to execute on your secrets. And so this allows you to use the secrets and to still have a really easy ability to extend your secrets across your distributed community, but still have a degree of control over it. Okay, so since this, I'm realizing that we can't do this on my fork, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and push this up into the actual ModernApps Ninja course repo template, so that way we can handle this. Okay, so let's. But in the meantime, I might as well. Sorry, the dogs are barking in the background. I hope that's not too distracting. Okay, it's definitely distracting me. Okay, so where were we? So now we still need our environmental variables though. So since we're here, let's go ahead and finish up that syntax. Um, we'll go back into our tweet.sh and let's look, what are the names of our environmental variables that we need here? Let's just copy a little boilerplate over here and we'll clean this up. Oh, we already got a copy there. I'll just use that. And let's go ahead and paste that in there. Go ahead and clean this up. Let's see. So let's go ahead. Oh, I should actually take out the space there too. Well, let's go ahead. And those are only the only 7 that have the space. So perfect. So we can just do a replace all. Oh, now we got those. And we'll tab them into the appropriate indentation level. Tab, 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 tab. Okay. So yeah, and we actually don't need the export word here, right? So let's just go ahead and get rid of that too. So let's go ahead and say we'll get rid of export space, and we replace it with nothing, and it has six. Okay, so let's get replace all those. Okay, then I could do like a regular expression to zero out all these x's at once, but let's do this. I'll just do it one at a time because I know my regular expression memory is not as good as I would like it to be. And we're gonna have to visit every one of these lines individually. So I'll just replace those x's as I paste in the values here for this. And so what we want to do is grab this one for syntax. And no, I do think that works fine. But let me just look back at this GitHub environmental variable reference just to see. Yeah, it should be no problem to include just the variable even in at that level because they're doing it with other ones. I'm pretty sure that works fine, so we'll leave that there. Now we don't want secrets.ninjabot.guru. So just as a refresher, when you do want to use the Twitter API, you do need to request a Twitter developer account, as we kind of briefly covered before. Inside your Twitter developer account, it gives you you can create what's called an app, which gives you keys that you can use to access the API. we have one here, right? I already generated the keys and already saved them. You can see keys and tokens. So when you just come through here, you set up one of these apps after you get your developer account provisioned. It's there's lots and lots of good documentation about this, so we're not going to go through it in detail. But yeah, you come to this essentially the same screen when you're first generating them. I don't need to regenerate them now. Already got them, and then you go into your GitHub org, and so let's go to our GitHub org here, Modern Apps Ninja. We're going to be running this, and I actually want to go all the way to the org because secrets are organization wide here. There might be repo wide secrets. I don't know. I use them organization wide right now. Repo scoped or what have you. So let's go look at my secrets to see what the names of the secrets are that I need to use. Okay, so now we've got other ones, and here we go. Twitter and Modern Apps. Oh gosh, I had to use like this long ass name. Pardon my French, excuse me. I had to use this long name to and yeah, to should have made that a little shorter. But hey, it's kind of like when in lack of a well conceived naming convention, err on the side of blabbing, I guess. Say descriptiveness. Okay. Oh, wait, and that's not even the right spot. So here I am copying this whole thing over, and I didn't even check to see if it matches the field name. And so in this case, we'll go ahead and I'll just copy that. And then what is this? The access token, access token. So we'll go ahead and go here, and we're going to place the X's, paste in the access token. Now, what's this next one? Access token secret. Okay. And I'll just use this top field now as kind of like a little scaffolder for me. Okay, so we have the token secret. We'll copy that and replace the token secret. Of course, and roulette colon. Okay, consumer key. Speed this up here a little bit. So that's our API key. And of course, did that wrong again. I should have just pasted the template onto all the fields and just done this that way, but nonetheless, not a big difference. But it made a lot more sense to do it this way. Let's put this here, and then okay, now I need to just what was the access token? A secret key. So let's just copy this, make sure I get it exactly right. Now, secret key line is this consumer is the API secret key. Okay, so let's go ahead and okay, that had a new line in it. So let's go ahead and get rid of that new line. Okay, is there an extra space? One, two, it's fine. Okay, so now hopefully couple more. We got to do the name and the language. So let's go ahead and go here. In this case, the name is Modern Apps Ninja. Is so they use the word screen name. I don't know why they chose screen name, but from what I can tell, that this is the same that is your handle, right? So like the name of that I have, like when you go to my account, the title on the page or the banner, it says Modern Apps Learning by VMware Tanzu. But when I originally created the account, the original handle I used was Modern Apps Ninja. And so when I go at Twitter / Modern Apps Ninja or at Modern Apps Ninja, that is the what it seems to want as the screen name here based on my initial testing. And then Ian for me is English. I believe that. Oh, and I gotta take it out of that TOML and put it into this YAML format. Okay, and then yep, we got our environments, and then we're gonna try and run it. And so there, that hopefully should do the trick. We should be ready for our next test. Let's go ahead and test this again. Now, what I want to do um, is synchronize my local copy of my fork with upstream. And what I want to do is I want to make sure I pull down all the upstream stuff and make sure my local copy running on my local machine here is all good before I push anything anywhere. Because sometimes keeping Git in sync with your local file system, your Git doesn't exactly work exactly like your local file system does, and so sometimes it can get a little out of sync if you're not careful. One nice thing is if you have your keep a current copy up on GitHub or GitLab or something like that, you can always delete it and start over if it starts to get out of sync. Um, but yeah, so in this case, I want to go ahead and take a certain method to do this that I think is pretty reliable for what I want to do. I think it will get me exactly where I want to be. So what I want to do is I want to go to my fork. Okay, so I'm going to go to my fork, and I'm going to go to the homepage for my fork. I like now that GitHub has this nice, reliable method. So you can see here, I'm way out of sync with, my fork is way out of sync with main. And that may be real easy, right? My guess is it's probably going to be really easy. But we're going to go ahead here, and this branch 6 has conflicts that must be resolved. So I'm just going to do that through the browser. I like the visual aspect of the browser. If you do it all the time for the CLI, it's really easy. But I go through periods of time where sometimes I have to be doing a bunch of this stuff, and then sometimes I don't, and I don't end up always remembering all the CLI syntax. And so for some of this stuff, um, it's nice to go look through this and see where the conflicts are. Where's the merge conflicts? I can see the changes, but what I want to know are what are the conflicts? Did I miss a conflict in that first one? Well, and when you get merge conflicts, right, like it ends up putting, this conflict syntax right in the file. And some of these are automatically generated files here that I don't know. I wonder if it's trying to sync, if by clicking that, it's also trying to sync the GH pages branch, because there should be a lot of, a lot of aspects to the GH pages branch that, yeah, I need to see by doing it. I didn't think about that. When I do it through this browser-based method, one of the negative byproducts of synchronizing through the browser-based method here is I think I should have had the main repository or main branch selected. Let me just go back and check. Yeah, it says main and main. So I guess it's not looking at the GH pages branch. Okay, well, whatever. So let's just say I'm just getting to this is my repository, right? So I don't have to as worry as much about following process on my fork as I will. And so I'm creating a pull request against myself to pull um, things from the head repository into my repository. Right? So I'm essentially opening a pull request for my own self, for my own fork to get it up to date against the main. So we'll just call that sync. Okay, pull request. Now it's going to do some more processing to tell me this branch has conflicts that must be resolved, and the conflicting file is GitHub Workflows create new course.yaml and content course template instructions.md. I don't know why either of those would have conflicts, but I must have made some updates that I didn't realize. So when you're resolving conflicts, whether you do it through the browser, whether you do it locally, and what it does is it essentially takes the file and it adds inline within the file some syntax about where the conflict is. And it started off with me already navigated to the right spot here. And so it's confused about, and sometimes, like right here, main, since I'm going from a main branch to main branch, it's really kind of a little bit confusing here as to which one's which, but it doesn't really matter so much. Like what matters is that you pick the one that you want, you modify this file to exactly what you want it to be, and then you just save it. You just edit this till you get the way you like it. So now the thing is what difference is it finding between these two files? That is an interesting question because certainly appears to me. Oh, I see. I see. So one of these, there is a set of quotations around um, a single quote around the and no. So one way I think I know that the one with the single quotes is the wrong one is because there is no dollar sign in front of this input, and I seem to I think I remember doing that. And yeah. So I actually think I tested it to see if this particular syntax needed me to kind of comment out the literal string here in order to be able to process this input. And then I ran it and I thought, oh well, I guess the one with the moving the variable out of the literal string, it didn't work. But actually, what didn't work is that I didn't have a dollar sign. But the net result was still effectively the same. That I realized you don't need to have the literal quotes in this particular string in that particular spot in order to get it to work right. So we'll go ahead and just edit it, right? So just take the stuff that we don't want, go ahead and edit it right out, delete. And now we have resolved the conflict. So we can scroll back up or down, I don't remember, to, I think it's the top of the page, and we can say mark as resolved. Boom. Now we go to the next one. Okay, now once again, I got to determine which of the two I want to keep. The last one was the bottom, so it would be kind of a nice confirmation here. Hopefully this is the bottom is the one. Now we get to the, let's see, what is this? New course template instructions. Create new course workflow on the actions tab of the new course actions tab of the modern apps ninja. Interestingly, so in this one, it looks like the top is the one that I keep. Well, yeah, that's the fun part about merge conflicts. They're not fun. They're never fun. As definitely in this case, the top one is the correct. Maybe the top one was the correct one. I don't know. Attention to detail kind of matters when you're doing this stuff. Come on. Okay, let's see here. So that one I kept the top, and here, blah blah blah. So this one it looks like you're gonna please open a ticket, repository, blah blah blah. I see a side by side scroll bar. Oh, I don't know if so that's it, just repository. So that one's bold. I don't see any syntax that's making it bold, but nonetheless, I'm gonna go with the top on this one too. So let's just come on, come on. Let's go ahead and just delete these extra lines. Okay. And now we can go ahead and mark as resolved. And hopefully, now we should. That first one was the create new course workflow. So I should test that. And we go ahead and I'm going to approve this and we're going to go ahead and merge it. And this is of course, this is to the main branch on my fork, right? I did not do anything there that changes the Modern Apps Ninja repository. I'm just changing my fork. So if I did do anything that is not kosher here, then I'll be able to see real quick because what I can do now as I merge this pull request, this will tell me right away when I head back to the home of this if my branch is even, right? So if any of those edits I made resulted in my side, because the edits again I made, are edits I made to my fork. And this function on the homepage should be telling me if my fork is even. And so I was trying to make sure, ideally, the one thing that was very unfortunate about that workflow is when you do it from the command line, I think that the text that it puts into the file to help you reserve the merge is actually more clear. Like I don't, I remember clearly being able to tell, which of these files is which, and on the GitHub UI based way of doing that. I didn't think it was, I'm sure someone with more experience in that using that UI may know something to tell for sure which one's which, but there wasn't really anything there. And usually when it does it, in my experience on the client, on your local client, there's an indication of which of the two strings came from which source. So anywho, and now it says I'm one commit of ahead, right? And so it's kind of weird. It says fetch upstream. I thought it said open, should update to open a pull request if you're one commit ahead. Hold on, let me refresh this page. So we've our one commit ahead of modern apps main, which makes sense. And okay, so that's where we push the contribute button and open pull request. And I still haven't pushed my latest changes up into this. I wanted to synchronize just to be on the side of caution, make sure that my current fork on GitHub is in sync with the Modern Apps Ninja, and then I'll worry about my local to my local to the because once I've done that, it's a lot easier on the rebase on that end. I'm a lot more confident that it won't result in any problems. So let's go ahead and create our pull request to push this back to up into the Modern Apps Ninja repository and merge pull request number 1. And what this is for, this isn't for a sync, this is for add manual tweet. Okay, we're going to go ahead and create the pull request. And it's going to direct us over, route us over to this pull request page. And there we go. So we'll go ahead and since I am the super admin, I could go ahead and use my boss privileges here to overwrite my branch protection settings and go ahead and push it straight through. Now that should not be the updated thing, right? Because we were just syncing those repositories. Now that I've sunken those repositories, I know my origin, right? If I go to from my so right now, like I'm in my local directory, I'm working off of my fork, the fork of the repository, right? And so I can go to my fork page. Let's go back to my fork page. Do, do, do. And the fork page here tells me right at the top, this branch is one commit behind. Okay, which is it's probably normal because it accepted that one. I don't know. Let's just fetch and merge, and we'll get this in sync. What I want is this to say that it's in sync, and then I'll be happy. Okay, we're good. Now we're this is in sync. And now I'm going to do that rebase operation. I'm going to fetch and rebase here on, so now I could say get fetch, and I want to fetch upstream in this case, or no, sorry, not upstream, origin. So I know my origin's already in sync. And rebase. Oh, I have on-stage changes. Please commit or change them. Yeah, so that's one thing about rebase. I was thinking about that. I forgot is, and actually didn't even, I didn't even think about this earlier. So I didn't exactly. But anyways, that's a great point. I had other committed local changes apparently earlier when I did the rebase, because that must be why it didn't give me this error. And so you do need to locally commit your change before it does the rebase. So in this case, let's leave that same message. Right. Okay, your branch or your main can be fast forwarded. Use get pull to update your local branch. And so in this case, I don't want to, get pull can be disruptive, right? And to the changes you have in your local file system. And so this time, it's barking at me that it doesn't want to commit. And now rebase, I don't know exactly why that happened, because usually, rebase is there. Um, but anywho, so let's go ahead and resolve this by, how do I want to do this? So let's just go ahead and go get stash. Okay. Now that we did our get stash, that takes everything that's working that hasn't been committed yet, and it stashes it, and that's going to allow us to safely do a get pull. So now let's go ahead and do a get pull, and let's go ahead and do origin main. Oh, I probably did the wrong syntax. Origin main. Okay, and now we should be good to go. So now what is get unstash? How do you unstash again? Get stash dash view maybe? I should just look at the command. It's a very easy command to remember that uh, how do I unstash again? Oh gosh. Do. Oh, I think it's just get stash again. Yeah. So hold on. Q. Is it? Maybe not. Okay. Apparently not. Why is this like not coming? And I do this all the time, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, I didn't think I remembered it being one of these ones. Okay, get stash. But I want to do pop. I want to do push. Remove a single stash state from the stash list and apply it to the top. Yeah, so we'll just pop it. That's good enough for me. Get stash pop. Come on. Q. There we go. Get stash pop. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and let's commit this. Commit it up. Finally, ready to commit this, and it should have no problem. But what does it say? Your branch is updated or changes not staged for commit. So, oh, I didn't add it. No wonder. That's why it wasn't working right. See, so I'm getting used to this live stream. I guess it's not like I don't ever make little slip ups like that when I'm doing it on my own, anyways. Part of life. Let's see. Get add dot, and that should take care of our problem there. Forgot to do the get add step. Okay, that makes a whole lot more sense now. So let's go ahead. We want to push this to our origin main. And you may not need to specify this. If you haven't saved it, cached it, then it may ask you to confirm. Um, but sometimes it's nice to be specific, so you know exactly what you're getting. Let's see. Okay, so now we pushed. Now we're back here. Now that again, origin is my fork, right? Because that is a local clone of my fork. not of the upstream. So now that we're here, we can see I'm back to this branch is one commit being ahead. I'm going to do that same pull request again. Essentially same process, but now this is for the additional changes that I had made to the adding those environmental variables here to that file. So we'll go ahead and create pull request. Create pull request. And then merge pull request. Okay, now this should get us to the point where we can do our test, and then we'll be all set. Hopefully we'll run and test this and it'll work. And if not, then I'll probably pick this up again later because it is getting time to go. And I wish I could say call it for the day. I don't usually call it for the day, but at least go and hang out with my family for a while before I inevitably come back into the office and work more. Okay, so we've got that. Now we can go back up to our actions tab. You should see that has been updated. Yeah, Hugo is running there. So let's just go ahead and try this again. I could, if I wanted to, go over the code view and look at the code for this to make sure the code's all what I want it to be before I try. But I'm not going to do that. This is a test. I should save this text somewhere. GitOps. Hello back with T dot S. And then I just want to do something here, put in that a fuel because I want to make sure. I know when I get manually including ats, and ats are usually not a special character problem, but I just want to include an at mentioned to somebody, make sure that this format is going to pass that through properly. So run workflow. Okay. Yeah, I've noticed there's some Ajaxy type stuff that happened on the GitHub pages, and you saw that time it did update pretty quickly. If you remember, we were just looking at it a few minutes ago after I hit run workflow, it didn't update quite as quickly. Sometimes you need to hit refresh. But if you don't see, if you start the tweet and you don't see that I forgot something else, didn't I? And you don't see it populate here on screen, probably just hit the refresh button and it'll show up if it doesn't automatically populate. It tries to automatically populate, but sometimes it doesn't work. Okay, so it didn't post a tweet. What does it say here? Permission denied. So I am on ModernApps Ninja, and so here's the interesting thing is when oh no. Well, let me, did we actually confirm that we pulled the tweet.sh script? Oh, yeah, we did. Okay. Yeah, it wouldn't say permission denied if we hadn't. Okay, so it doesn't something about our variables here. Now, let me confirm. Now, I need to do, while I confirm this, is I am going to pull this virtual machine to a different window because I'm going to look in my Ubuntu host here to confirm how I entered the values in that file, that key file. And that does expose my keys. So I'm going to pull that. And now you can see other things that I've been looking at. But yeah, let me, wow, this really screwed up my size of my screen. I have two resolutions on these monitors. And so when I move it back and forth, sometimes it's a pain. What did I want to see? I want to see this. Where did it go? So we've got our cloned tweet.sh and then our client key file. I'm looking at it here. And let's see. And I did as my screen name. Oh, well, no, that doesn't. I did use ModernApps Ninja. And these are, I'm sure, the same values. And so I'm wondering if it's something about the variable names. Let me see in my environmental. Let's just check this real quick here. And oh, why am I over here? Let's just go Modern Apps Ninja. And then and of course it's giving me a pain and not populate the name of the repository I'm looking for, but it'll be right here on top. We've been using it. Okay, so now we're gonna go Github Workflows. Why does this being a pain? Let's see. So let's see. Consumer key. Access token see. My screen name. Let's see. My screen name, my language. Yep, I used EN. Now, in the syntax, it shows on. Let's just go here. I think we're gonna try something real quick. And if if we don't get it working, I'll probably take a little bit of this troubleshooting offline and come back with and figure out exactly what it is. But let's go ahead and do a little due diligence first, and um, and see if we can't find a quick resolution to this. So let's want to go back to these instructions here. And I'm trying to think here. What is the difference? You can give those information via environmental variables without a key file. So I'm thinking that I could sit here and try and figure out why the environmental variable method is not working right, and try a bunch of things. But one thing I do know is that the uh one way that is that on my local client, it definitely works to have these injected into the file. And so maybe the right approach here is rather than me screwing around with the environmental variables, maybe just download the file and this tweet client key file here, download that file and use that because that one we know worked for us and I'm not exactly sure why this wasn't working. I mean, someone else might be watching this and be like, "Oh, that's because not apparent to me for whatever the case may be." And there's obviously some ways they could try to make these work, but maybe rather than injecting the variables through GitHub Actions, through the YAML file format, I could do them through Bash within the GitHub Actions step, and maybe that would have a difference. But my understanding is it should have the same result, right? And so nonetheless, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break right now. We've been going for a while, and we'll pick this video up again probably later tonight. I will live stream then, and at that point, we'll go ahead and set up um, this modifier GitHub action workflow to inject our variables into this file. And yeah, there's actually a couple different ways to do it. I'm kind of thinking one is we could download this file, right? And then modify the file. But actually, why do I even need to do that? All I actually really need to do is echo this name. And let me try that. That's not gonna take long. That's a real simple thing. So let's go ahead and give that a try. So we already got, actually, I already think I got that information. So let me pull back and close my secret key file over here. And so I can pull back my virtual machine onto this window. Come on. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now we've got all this stuff, and I don't want to do it that way. What I want to do is I'm going to take all these and let's see. I just want to echo them into that file. Okay, so you want to go Just get rid of all those. And we'll get rid of this whole end section. Now you want to go here. Fix this. Okay, so now I've got all this. Now I want to go echo, and we'll just copy this too. And where did we say that file name was? What was the file name? Where did it go? Okay, here. And file name is, let's copy this. .tweet client key. And this time I want to make sure I mean, the order of this shouldn't matter. I mean, I could reverse the order to be safe, but honestly, it really shouldn't matter. So let's go ahead and I'm going to make the first one in the row here to overwrite, to create a new file instead of add. And for the rest of these, we'll just go ahead and I'm just kind of breaking this into two steps for simplification of cutting and pasting. And I could actually do a little control H on this and make it a little faster, but there's only a couple lines that'll. And that one, we don't need to do that on. So now we've got that. Now we want to go this is save a little time here. And when I did that on the back end, I should have copied that closing quote and then I would have been done already. Live and learn. Here. We don't want two of those. We want one. One thing you got to worry about in IDEs is to try to be smart. And if you're not paying attention, sometimes they try to add things that you don't want. And a lot of times they'll then turn around and lint them for you. And sometimes they don't. Especially when you have like complex syntax like this, where you've broken up with a bunch of squiggly brackets and all types of different things. And then okay. Now, okay, so all of these, adding this to that file. So that file should get populated and then we should get that post. Now I should go ahead and yeah, let's see. We'll go ahead. Now you may notice, if you've seen a lot of my videos, I say like you always want to like work on a branch. You don't want to work on the main so much. And one area where I think there's some flexibility of that is when you're on your own fork. Right, if you're on your own fork, it's a little bit more flexible. It's still always the best practice to create branches and delete branches and all that. Especially if you really want to keep your long running fork. Like for me, the purpose of how I'm using my fork and kind of the knowledge I have about how I want to use it, at least based on what I know now, like it's kind of a disposable fork. I only thing I ever use it for is stub it up, do some work on it, and then post. I don't have anything that I want to keep long running on it. That may change, but at the end of the day, I can always delete and rebuild my fork if I need to. Right. So in this case, I am working on my main branch, but on my only on my fork, not on the official repository or anything. So let's see. So what do I want to do? I want to go get dot. Let's see, what are we doing? We're doing the same thing, right? We're updating just gonna keep it simple. Let's go ahead and see if it barks on push. No bark on push, that's nice. Decided to be nice to us. Okay, so now let's go back to our fork in the browser. With the HCLI, you can, pretty easily do a lot of the stuff just in the CLI, and you can script it up and stuff. But when I'm gonna do it manually, I kind of like using the browser for some of these things. Let's see. Okay. And go ahead and let's compare. I think this is just recognizing the new file that we committed before. There is no, yeah, there's no conflicts. So, given that there's no conflicts, I'm just gonna go ahead to this contribute here and send over my change. And then afterwards we'll sync. And we can see there, that's exactly what we did. And create pull request, create pull request. We'll go ahead and merge this. And then we'll do one more test to see if that worked. Hopefully that'll do the trick. And then I gotta call it for a little while after this. Well, I'm tired. Let's see. So now we're gonna go ahead. We did all that. We got all that. Now we'll go to actions. You should see that Hugo build is running. Yep. And we can go and go into our manual tweet. And we'll go run workflow. And this time I'm gonna be really lazy since I didn't save. I should have saved that. Oh, hey, it saved it for me. So let's do that one. Nice. Forgot about that. Let's go ahead and run the workflow. And fingers crossed. Let's see what happens. Sometimes, I mean, should eventually like catch up with itself, but as you see, it hasn't. Even though I started the workflow, it hasn't updated the page yet to show that. And so it does try to dynamically do it, but sometimes I said their manual refresh showed it was actually working. It's just sometimes that dynamic refresh doesn't do by itself and needs a little help. Go ahead and watch this post tweet workflow work and see if it does its thing. And no, I can see it failed. The screen, once again, the dynamic update on the screen did not populate. So I'm just going to refresh the page to try to force it to give me what I want to see. I wonder what this could be. So, permission denied. See, this is really kind of fun and peculiar because, like, there's definitely times that, and I think the hard part now is the verbosity of that error, right? The one thing I do know, one question I have is, did I install all the dependencies that need to, or are the dependencies present here? And I do know that, like, that one dependency that I reinstalled here, I didn't have that on my local machine, and it gave me a distinct error message, to tell me that I didn't have that. So one of the things we don't know from this output is we don't know if it's if what exactly is the error. Is there something wrong with um, the information I put in this file or the file itself, or could it possibly be that there's something else going on? Right. Hmm. So dot tweet, and there's a few other things like after I create this tweet client key file, I should cat it here so I can see it. Now if I do the cat here, that I don't know what that'll show. I don't know if that'll filter out. It should filter out the, well, at that point the token is just displaying a file that actually should have the key in it. And there's also the chance of that variable injection, that the GitHub action may have some rule, because they do have some security policies in place that sometimes prevent things that you want to do. So they might have some policy that is possibly preventing me from injecting a secret into a file like this. I don't think that's the case. I'm sure I've injected secrets into environmental files before. But yeah, the big challenge with this is that I don't know exactly why. There are lots of different things. The one thing I can try, I think next is try using the method with environmental variables in my local environment and see if I can repeat that rather than messing with this file more. Um, another method too is see if I can push these environmental variables here through the same method into a file, as maybe there's something about how I'm pushing them. But again, that could involve. So I think the environmental variable method is like, I don't have to worry that method about whether there's anything in the script here that, or in GitHub Actions, that is preventing me from pushing a secret into a file. And then there's kind of another related thing, right? Is like, and then if I want to like display that file to see if the variable's injected properly, hopefully it prevented the secret from being displayed, even if you could see that the variable was trying to inject at least partially. Um, yeah, so it's a bit of a pain, as is often the case with these things. Something that is really simple on the local bash script is a little more complicated in GitHub Action. That's kind of the nature of the beast. So we will come back in the near future. Probably later tonight, see if we can get to the next step of troubleshooting to figure out what's going on with this. Thank you very much.